I'm Jesus, 34, former COO of our family company, until last month when my sister fired me. After 12 years building the business alongside my parents, Miranda decided I was disposable. One day she was appointed CEO, the next day I was out. Being the golden child has its perks. What she didn't know was that I owned the intellectual property behind our success. Let me tell you how I smiled and took it all back. Before we dive in, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button to join me on this journey of justice. My family always had a clear hierarchy. My father Richard, a self-made entrepreneur, and my mother Diane ran our household with the same precision Dad applied to his business spreadsheets. At the top of this family.org chart was always Miranda, my sister, 3 years older and infinitely more valued. The golden girl, the chosen one, the future of the Alvarez legacy. Growing up in Austin, Texas, I learned early that Miranda's dance recitals trumped my coding competitions. Her C+ deserved celebration dinners, while my perfect grades were simply expected. When she got into trouble, it was just a phase. When I made mistakes, it was disappointing behavior. Dad started his company in our garage when I was just 7 years old. Reynolds Supply Chain Solutions began as a simple software program that helped small businesses track inventory. Dad had worked for a major logistics company for 15 years before deciding he could build something better on his own. At first, it was just him hunched over a computer at night after his day job, coding until the early morning hours. I was fascinated by what he was creating. While other kids my age were playing video games, I was peering over Dad's shoulder, asking questions about functions and variables. By 12, I had taught myself to code through library books and early internet tutorials. I would sit for hours in my room, practicing, building small programs, and dreaming about someday contributing to Dad's growing business. Miranda took a different path. She was social, charismatic, and naturally drew people to her. Mom and Dad paid for her to attend private school, then funded her business degree at Harvard. Meanwhile, I attended the local public school and later had to work part-time jobs to help pay my way through the state university, where I studied software engineering. One night, when I was 15, I couldn't sleep and wandered down to the garage where Dad had left his computer on. I noticed a flaw in his inventory tracking system that was causing occasional data corruption. Excited by the challenge, I stayed up until dawn rewriting the function, implementing a more efficient algorithm that not only fixed the bug, but made the whole system run 30% faster. When Dad discovered my changes the next morning, I expected praise. Instead, he frowned and said, "You should have asked permission before touching my code. This is just basic optimization anyway." He used my solution, but never acknowledged it came from me. Despite this, I still dreamed of joining the family business. After graduating with honors in software engineering, I turned down offers from several tech giants in Silicon Valley and Seattle. The salaries were triple what Dad offered, but I believed in our family company and wanted to help build its legacy. By then, Reynolds Supply Chain Solutions had grown to 20 employees and moved into a real office. The first few years were challenging. I started at the bottom, handling customer support calls, but spent my evenings developing new features. 6 months in, I proposed a complete overhaul of our core product to include predictive inventory management using early machine learning techniques. Dad was skeptical, but allowed me to develop a prototype on my own time. 3 months later, I demonstrated a system that could predict supply shortages before they happened, allowing clients to order inventory at optimal times. Clients loved it. Our sales doubled within a year. Dad finally recognized my value and promoted me to lead developer. The company continued to grow rapidly as we expanded our offerings. By my 5th year, we had over 100 employees and moved into a larger office building. What had started in our garage was now a respectable mid-sized business with clients across North America. Miranda graduated from Harvard, and despite having no technical background or experience in our industry, Dad immediately appointed her as Director of Marketing. I bit my tongue and continued focusing on improving our products. The company was my passion, and I believed that results would speak louder than family politics. Little did I know how wrong I was. Miranda's appointment as marketing director, despite her complete lack of experience, was just the beginning. The real problem started when I developed our AI-powered inventory management system, a revolutionary approach that could predict supply chain disruptions with remarkable accuracy. This innovation propelled our company to new heights, increasing our revenue by an astounding 200% in just 18 months. Our client base expanded from regional businesses to include several Fortune 500 companies. We were suddenly the hot new thing in supply chain management, and industry publications were clamoring to feature our groundbreaking technology. During the quarterly management meeting, Miranda presented the marketing department's achievements. Her PowerPoint deck was filled with impressive growth charts and testimonials from our new high-profile clients. Not once during her 45-minute presentation did she mention the technological advancements that made this growth possible. Instead, she attributed the success to her comprehensive rebranding initiative and strategic client acquisition approach. I sat silently, watching our parents beam with pride as Miranda eloquently took credit for what was largely my team's innovation. When it was my turn to present the technology updates, Dad cut my time from 30 minutes to 10, saying, "We're running long, and we already covered the growth numbers." This became a pattern. I would work night after night, often not leaving the office until 2 or 3 a.m., developing new features and ensuring our systems could handle the growing demand. During one particularly intense development cycle, I worked 20 days straight without a day off, eventually collapsing from exhaustion and ending up in the hospital with pneumonia. Even from my hospital bed, I was answering emails and reviewing code. Miranda visited once, for exactly 7 minutes, mostly to tell me about the crisis she was managing, because a client was unhappy with some marketing materials. When I returned to work after a week, still not fully recovered, I discovered that Dad had given Miranda a raise and a new title: Executive Vice President of Client Relations. My salary remained unchanged. The final straw came during the company's 10th anniversary celebration. My parents rented out an upscale restaurant and invited all employees and major clients. Dad gave a speech chronicling the company's journey and success. He spoke at length about Miranda's contributions, calling her the soul of Reynolds Solutions and the driving force behind our unprecedented growth. My name was mentioned once, grouped with our talented technical team. 10 years of pouring my heart, soul, and mind into building the company, and I was an afterthought. After the party, Maria, our head of customer support and one of the few people who truly understood my contributions, found me alone at the bar. "You know this isn't right," she said, sliding onto the stool next to mine. "You should say something. Stand up for yourself." "What's the point?" I replied, staring into my glass. "They've made up their minds about who matters in this company." "Then maybe it's time to make some changes," Maria suggested. "Your work is the backbone of this company. They need to recognize that." The next day, I proposed expanding our services internationally, starting with offices in Europe and Asia. The global supply chain was increasingly complex, and I saw tremendous potential for our predictive systems in international markets. Miranda immediately opposed the idea. "We're not ready for international expansion. The marketing costs alone would be prohibitive, and we don't have the infrastructure." Dad sided with Miranda, as always, and my proposal was shelved without serious consideration. Around this time, Dad began having health problems. Nothing life-threatening, but at 62, his doctor recommended reducing his workload. This led to discussions about the future leadership of the company. One evening, I overheard my mother talking to Dad in his home office. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but when I heard my name, I paused outside the door. "Of course, Miranda will take over eventually," Mom was saying. "She has the business acumen and the leadership qualities. Jesus is brilliant with the technical stuff, but he's not CEO material. He's too quiet, too focused on details instead of the big picture." Dad sighed. "I know. He's valuable, but he's not a leader. Miranda has always had that natural authority." I walked away, heart pounding. After all these years, all my contributions, they still saw me as just the technical guy, not worthy of leading the company I'd helped build from the ground up. That night, I channeled my hurt into work. I began developing a new security feature for our system, one that would protect our clients' data from increasingly sophisticated cyber threats. I told no one about it, working on it during nights and weekends. This would be my project, my creation entirely, and I made sure to document every step of the development process. Little did I know that this secret project would eventually become my salvation. 6 months after the conversation I overheard, Dad promoted me to Chief Operating Officer. The title sounded impressive, but I quickly realized it was just that, a title. I had no real authority to make strategic decisions. Any significant initiative still required Miranda's approval, and she had developed a habit of rejecting my proposals almost reflexively. When I suggested implementing a new client onboarding system that would reduce setup time by 60%, Miranda shot it down, claiming it would confuse our existing customers. When I wanted to increase the development team to accelerate our AI capabilities, she slashed the proposed budget by half, making it impossible to hire the talent we needed. It became increasingly clear that my sister was systematically undermining my position in the company. In management meetings, she would frequently interrupt me or dismiss my ideas before I could fully explain them. If a client praised a new feature my team had developed, Miranda would quickly redirect the conversation to marketing efforts. During this challenging period, I met Matthew Jenkins at a tech conference in Chicago. He was a lawyer specializing in intellectual property and technology, and we struck up a conversation at the hotel bar after the day's events. "So you developed the core algorithms for Reynolds Solutions?" he asked, after I explained my role. "That's impressive. Have you protected your intellectual property?" I looked at him, confused. "It's the company's intellectual property. I developed it while working there." Matthew shook his head. "It's not that simple, especially in family businesses. Have you signed any specific agreements regarding ownership of code you develop? Do you have documentation proving you're the creator?" That conversation was a wake-up call. When I returned home, I began researching IP law and discovered that the situation was indeed complex. While work created as an employee typically belongs to the company, there were exceptions, especially when the creator was also an owner or family member without clear employment contracts. Following Matthew's advice, I began meticulously documenting all my contributions. For my new security system, I registered the copyright under my own name, separate from the company. It was a defensive move, one I hoped I'd never need to use. Around this time, Tech Forward, one of our biggest competitors, approached Dad with an offer to buy the company. They offered $300 million, an amount that would have made our entire family wealthy, beyond our wildest dreams. Dad called a family meeting at their house to discuss the offer. Miranda argued strongly against selling, portraying it as giving up and abandoning what we've built. I stayed quiet, observing the dynamics. "This is our legacy," Dad said finally. "I didn't build this company to sell it to the highest bidder. I built it for our family, for the future." What he meant, though he didn't say it, was that he built it for Miranda's future, not mine. 2 weeks after rejecting the offer, I was working late at the office when I heard voices from the conference room. Curious, I approached quietly and recognized Miranda's voice, along with someone I didn't immediately identify. "We can structure the deal to give you full control," the male voice was saying. "Your parents and brother would get their financial share, but you'd maintain operational leadership." "My brother would be the problem," Miranda replied. "He thinks the company can't function without him and his precious algorithms." I froze, then quietly retreated to my office, mind racing. Miranda was having secret discussions about some kind of deal, possibly with Tech Forward or another competitor. She was planning something behind our backs. Rather than confronting her, I decided to focus on making myself truly indispensable. I accelerated work on my security system project, which I named Guardian. It was designed to protect our clients' data from increasingly sophisticated cyber threats, using advanced encryption and anomaly detection. When I finally unveiled Guardian to the executive team, even Miranda couldn't deny its value. Several major clients had recently experienced data breaches, and cybersecurity was their top concern. Guardian addressed these fears directly and elegantly. The system was an immediate success. Within 3 months of launch, we signed contracts with 5 Fortune 100 companies specifically because of Guardian's capabilities. Our revenue projections for the year increased by 40%. Despite this success, Dad's health continued to deteriorate. His doctor diagnosed him with a heart condition that required significant lifestyle changes. Family dinners became tense affairs, with discussions inevitably turning to the company's future leadership. One evening, Dad made his decision official. "I'll be stepping back from day-to-day operations next month," he announced. "It's time for the next generation to take the reins." I waited, a small part of me still hoping that my recent successes had changed his perception, that he might recognize my value to the company. "Miranda will take over as CEO," he continued, dashing those hopes. "She has the vision and leadership skills to take Reynolds Solutions to the next level." I maintained a neutral expression, but inside, a door closed. I realized then that no matter what I achieved, no matter how crucial my contributions were, I would always be secondary in my family's eyes. That night, I called Matthew and asked for a meeting. It was time to protect myself. The board meeting where Dad officially announced his retirement was a well-orchestrated performance. The conference room was packed with board members, executives, and key shareholders. Dad stood at the head of the table, looking dignified despite his obvious fatigue, and delivered a speech about legacy, growth, and future vision. "After 22 years leading this company from my garage to where we stand today, it's time for new energy and fresh perspectives," he said, his voice strong despite his weakened state. "I'm proud to announce that effective immediately, Miranda Reynolds will be taking over as Chief Executive Officer." Applause filled the room as Miranda rose to accept a ceremonial plaque. She gave a polished speech about honoring her father's legacy, while boldly moving the company forward. I sat quietly, clapping along with everyone else, pushing down the hurt and resentment that threatened to surface. After the meeting, several executives approached me, assuming I'd be upset about being passed over. I maintained a professional demeanor, saying all the right things about supporting my sister and continuing to focus on operational excellence. "Miranda and I will make a great team," I told them, forcing a smile. "Her business vision combined with my technical expertise is exactly what Reynolds Solutions needs." I actually believed this was possible. Despite everything, I still held hope that Miranda and I could find a way to work together effectively. She was ambitious and sometimes ruthless in business, but she was still my sister. Surely she understood that my skills were essential to the company's success. That evening, our parents hosted a celebration dinner at their home. Extended family members and close friends of the family attended, all raising glasses to Miranda's new position. One by one, people stood to offer congratulations and predictions of her inevitable success. No one mentioned my contributions to the company. No one acknowledged that without the systems and algorithms I'd created, there would be nothing for Miranda to lead. It was as if I were a distant employee, rather than a key architect of the business. By the time dessert was served, I couldn't maintain the facade any longer. I excused myself and stepped out onto the patio for some air. Mom followed me a few minutes later. "You should be happier for your sister," she said, her tone conveying disappointment. "I am happy for her," I replied. "I just wish someone, anyone, would acknowledge that I've played a part in building this company too." Mom patted my arm. "Of course you have, dear. No one's saying you haven't. But leadership is about more than just technical knowledge. Miranda has always had that special quality, that charisma that makes people want to follow her. And I don't," I stated flatly. "You have other gifts," she said, which wasn't an answer but told me everything I needed to know. The next day was Miranda's first as CEO. She arrived at the office early and immediately began making changes. By noon, she had moved into Dad's corner office, replaced his simple furniture with modern pieces, and had the maintenance team taking down the company logo in the lobby to make way for a new design she'd commissioned weeks ago. The message was clear. This was her company now, and she was wasting no time putting her stamp on it. I tried to carry on business as usual, focusing on finalizing a new contract with a major client. Around 4 in the afternoon, Miranda's new assistant called to inform me that the CEO wanted to see me in her office at 5:30. I arrived precisely on time, knocking on the door that just yesterday had my father's name on it. Now it read, "Miranda Reynolds, Chief Executive Officer," in sleek modern lettering. "Come in," Miranda called. She was seated behind Dad's old desk, though it had been refinished in a glossy white. The family photos Dad had displayed were gone, replaced by modern art and Miranda's Harvard diploma. "Have a seat, Jesus," she said, not looking up from her computer. I sat in one of the new visitor chairs, noticeably less comfortable than the ones Dad had chosen. After making me wait for nearly a minute while she finished typing something, Miranda finally looked up. "I'm making some organizational changes," she said without preamble. "That's to be expected with new leadership," I replied neutrally. "What did you have in mind?" "I'm creating a flatter executive structure, more agility, less bureaucracy." I nodded, waiting for her to continue. "As part of these changes, I've decided to eliminate the COO position." I stared at her, processing what she was saying. "You're restructuring my role?" "No," Miranda said, her voice cool and detached. "I'm eliminating it. Effective immediately, your services are no longer needed at Reynolds Solutions." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You're firing me?" "I prefer to think of it as a mutual recognition that your talents might be better utilized elsewhere. The company is moving in a new direction, and frankly, your management style doesn't align with my vision." "My management style?" I repeated incredulously. "Miranda, I built half the systems that keep this company running. I designed the security protocols, the prediction algorithms, the entire back-end architecture." She waved her hand dismissively. "We have documentation. The development team can maintain the systems. It's not about maintenance. It's about innovation, development, moving forward. The team is great, but they didn't design these systems. I did." Miranda's expression hardened. "This decision isn't up for debate. HR has prepared your severance package. It's generous. 2 months' salary, plus benefits continuation for 90 days. 2 months? After 12 years? The standard package is 1 month. I'm already being more than fair." I stood up, anger finally breaking through my shock. "Does Dad know about this?" For the first time, Miranda looked slightly uncomfortable. "Mom and Dad support my decisions as CEO. This is business, Jesus. It's not personal." "Not personal? You're firing your own brother one day after taking control of the family company. How is that not personal?" Miranda pressed a button on her desk phone. "Security, please come to the CEO's office." I couldn't believe what was happening. "You're having me escorted out?" "Standard procedure for executive terminations. Your personal items have already been packed. They'll be sent to your home. Company devices and credentials need to be surrendered immediately." 2 security guards appeared at the door, looking uncomfortable but resolute. "This isn't over, Miranda," I said quietly. She didn't respond, already turning her attention back to her computer as if I were already gone. The security team walked me to the exit. Employees stared as I passed, their expressions ranging from shock to pity. Maria tried to approach me, but one of the guards stepped between us. "I'll call you," she mouthed silently. Outside, I sat in my car for nearly an hour, too stunned to drive. Finally, I called my father's cell phone. He didn't answer. I called my parents' home, and my mother picked up. "I've just been fired," I said, without greeting. There was a pause before she responded. "Your father and I think it's for the best. You and Miranda have different visions for the company. This will give you an opportunity to explore your own path." "You knew? You knew she was planning this?" "Miranda discussed her reorganization plans with us last week. We support her decisions as CEO." The betrayal was complete. Not just my sister, but my parents too. 12 years of my life, my creativity, my youth poured into building their company, and they discarded me without a second thought. That night, alone in my apartment surrounded by boxes of office mementos, I experienced the darkest moment of my life. Everything I had worked for, everything I had built, had been taken away in an instant. My family had chosen Miranda over me, business over blood. I barely slept, cycling through anger, hurt, and disbelief. By dawn, exhaustion finally pulled me into a restless sleep, but one thought remained clear. This wasn't the end of my story with Reynolds Solutions, not by a long shot. 3 days after my unceremonious dismissal, Maria called me from a number I didn't recognize. "I can't talk long," she said, her voice low. "They've been monitoring internal communications since you left, but you need to know something." My apartment was still in disarray, boxes of office belongings unopened in the living room. I hadn't showered or changed clothes since the day Miranda fired me. "What's going on?" I asked, suddenly alert. "Miranda's in talks to sell the company. To Tech Forward. The same offer your dad rejected 3 months ago." The information jolted me fully awake. "That's impossible. Dad would never agree to that. Your parents don't know yet. She's negotiating privately, planning to present it as a done deal. There's more, Jesus. She started these discussions 6 months ago, long before your dad decided to step down." The pieces suddenly clicked into place. Miranda's opposition to my international expansion plan, her systematic efforts to undermine my authority, the mysterious conversation I'd overheard. It wasn't just about her taking control. It was about preparing to sell the company all along. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked Maria. "Because it's wrong. Because you built this company as much as anyone, and because I handed in my resignation this morning." After hanging up, I showered for the first time in days and began to think clearly. This wasn't just about sibling rivalry or family drama anymore. This was corporate betrayal on a massive scale. I called Matthew, who agreed to meet me immediately at a coffee shop downtown. When I explained what Maria had told me, his expression grew increasingly serious. "This changes things significantly," he said, pulling out his laptop. "Let's talk about your options." Over the next 3 hours, we discussed the intellectual property rights to the software I'd developed. Matthew had already begun researching my specific situation after our previous conversations. "The good news is that you filed proper copyright registration for Guardian, your security system," Matthew said. "That's unquestionably yours. The core prediction algorithms are trickier because they were developed while you were clearly employed by the company. But I created those algorithms on my own time, often at home," I countered. "That helps," Matthew nodded. "Do you have evidence? Timestamps, early drafts, development notes with dates?" Fortunately, I had always been meticulous about documentation. I had cloud backups of every iteration of code I'd written, complete with timestamps and notes. When I got home from meeting Matthew, I began a thorough investigation of my own. I remote accessed my personal cloud storage and reviewed years of work files. What I discovered was infuriating. Miranda had been systematically removing my name from patent applications and technical documentation for months. In official company records, many of my innovations were now credited to the Reynolds Solutions development team rather than to me specifically. The next morning, I drove to my parents' house, hoping to speak with my father directly. Neither of them was home, but I still had a key. On a hunch, I went to Dad's home office and checked his filing cabinet. There, I found the original incorporation documents for Reynolds Supply Chain Solutions, along with early contracts and agreements. Among these papers was something invaluable: the original partnership agreement between Dad and me, drafted when I first joined the company officially after college. I had forgotten about this document, signed when the company was still small and operating informally. It stipulated that any intellectual property I developed would remain mine, with the company having an exclusive license to use it as long as I remained an employee or owner. Dad had likely forgotten about this clause too, or assumed it had been superseded by later contracts, but Matthew confirmed it was still legally binding. My termination had automatically revoked the company's license to use my proprietary code. As I was processing this discovery, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Jesus? This is Alex Chen from Atlas Corp. I'm not sure if you remember me, but we met at the supply chain conference last year." Atlas Corp was one of Reynolds Solutions' largest clients. Alex was their chief technology officer. "Of course I remember you, Alex. What can I do for you?" "Well, this is awkward, but we're having some issues with the Reynolds system. Critical errors in the prediction module. We've been trying to get support for 2 days, but no one seems to understand how to fix it. Your name came up as the original architect of the system." This was just the first of several similar calls I received over the next week. Without my expertise, critical systems were beginning to fail. The development team Miranda had so confidently mentioned couldn't maintain the complex architectures I'd built because I'd never fully documented the most advanced features. It wasn't deliberate obfuscation. I'd simply been too busy creating new features to write comprehensive documentation for systems only I fully understood. Meanwhile, Matthew had been doing some digging of his own. He discovered that Miranda had taken out a substantial loan to buy our parents' shares in the company, putting herself in a precarious financial position. The only way she could pay back the loan was by selling the company quickly. She's desperate, Matthew explained. The loan terms give her 6 months to pay it back in full. That's why she's rushing the tech forward deal, probably at a discount from their original offer. The final piece fell into place when Maria, now officially my ally, sent me internal documents showing that Miranda had no understanding of the company's technical infrastructure. In executive meetings, she had been bluffing her way through technical discussions, relying on other team members to cover her ignorance. She's selling because she knows she can't actually run the company, I told Matthew during another strategy session. She doesn't understand the product well enough to lead effectively. With all this information in hand, Matthew and I began developing a comprehensive strategy. I reached out to several investors I'd met over the years, explaining my situation without revealing confidential details. 2 expressed serious interest in backing me if I decided to start a new venture. I also contacted key technical employees who had been loyal to me, discreetly asking if they would consider joining a new company. Almost all said yes immediately. The pieces of my counterattack were falling into place. I spent hours refining the strategy with Matthew, anticipating Miranda's responses, preparing legal documents, and building a financial model for either acquiring Reynolds Solutions or competing directly against it. "Are you ready for this?" Matthew asked me during our final planning session. "Once we send the cease and desist letter, there's no turning back. This will irrevocably change your relationship with your family." I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to earn my parents' approval, all the nights working until dawn to perfect systems that Miranda would take credit for, all the times I'd swallowed my pride when my contributions were minimized or ignored. "My relationship with my family changed the moment they chose Miranda over me," I said firmly. "I'm ready." Matthew nodded and pulled out the final document for my signature, an official notice to Reynolds Solutions to cease and desist using all intellectual property created by Jesus Reynolds, effective immediately. As I signed my name, I felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time in my life, I wasn't seeking my family's approval or recognition. I was standing up for myself, for what I had built, for what was rightfully mine. The war for Reynolds Solutions was about to begin. The cease and desist letter arrived at Reynolds Solutions headquarters via courier the following morning. I imagined Miranda's face as she read the document, informing her that the company was legally prohibited from using any of the proprietary code I had developed, including the Guardian security system and the core prediction algorithms that powered their primary products. I didn't have to imagine her reaction for long. My phone rang less than an hour after the letter's delivery. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Miranda demanded, her voice tight with anger. "Protecting my intellectual property," I replied calmly, "as is my right. This is ridiculous. You developed that code as an employee of Reynolds Solutions. It belongs to the company. Check the original partnership agreement, Miranda, the one Dad and I signed when I joined the company. My innovations remain my intellectual property, with the company holding a license only while I remain an employee or owner. Since you terminated my employment, you terminated the license." There was a moment of silence as this information sank in. "This is just spite," she finally said. "You're bitter about being let go, and now you're trying to sabotage the company out of revenge." "It's business, Miranda," I replied, echoing her words from when she fired me. "Not personal." She hung up without another word. As expected, Miranda's first move was to dismiss the legal threat entirely. The company's lawyers sent a response, asserting that all intellectual property belonged to Reynolds Solutions and threatening countersuits if I persisted with my frivolous and unfounded claims. Meanwhile, I arranged meetings with 4 of Reynolds Solutions' largest clients, including Atlas Corp. These weren't sales pitches. I simply explained the situation honestly, including the intellectual property dispute and my plans moving forward. "We're not taking sides in a family dispute," Alex Chen from Atlas Corp told me during our meeting, "but we need a functioning supply chain management system. Right now, yours isn't functioning." "I understand," I replied. I'm prepared to offer immediate technical support to address your current issues, regardless of how the larger legal questions resolve. All 4 clients accepted my offer of emergency support, which gave me access to their systems and data. This allowed me to document exactly how Reynolds Solutions was continuing to use my proprietary code, despite the cease and desist order, strengthening our legal position. While I was building relationships with key clients, Maria and 5 other senior employees resigned from Reynolds Solutions to join my newly formed company, Horizon Systems. Each brought valuable expertise and client relationships, further weakening Miranda's position. The technical problems at Reynolds Solutions grew increasingly severe. Without my knowledge or documentation, the remaining development team struggled to maintain the complex systems. Critical functions began failing, triggering emergency calls from panicked clients. Miranda attempted to hire external consultants to reverse engineer the systems, but the architecture was too complex and uniquely designed to be quickly understood by outsiders. One consultant reportedly told her it would take 6 months just to fully document the existing codebase before they could even begin fixing problems. 3 weeks after sending the cease and desist letter, Matthew and I filed a formal lawsuit against Reynolds Solutions for intellectual property infringement, seeking an immediate injunction to prevent them from using my code plus damages for unauthorized use. The news spread quickly through the industry. Tech Forward, getting wind of the legal troubles, reportedly put their acquisition talks on hold. Reynolds Solutions' stock value, which had been privately traded but still tracked, dropped by 30% in 2 days. This forced Miranda to call an emergency board meeting, to which my parents were invited as major shareholders. Matthew and I requested to attend to present our case directly. After initial resistance, the board agreed, likely hoping to find a quick resolution to the crisis. The meeting took place in the main conference room at Reynolds Solutions headquarters, the same room where Miranda had been named CEO just 6 weeks earlier. Now, instead of celebration, the atmosphere was tense and confrontational. I entered with Matthew beside me, carrying a folder of documents and a USB drive containing evidence of my intellectual property claims. My parents sat on one side of the table, looking uncomfortable and avoiding my gaze. Miranda sat at the head of the table, flanked by the company's legal team. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting," I began. "I believe it's in everyone's best interest to resolve this situation quickly and amicably." Miranda scoffed. "There's nothing to resolve. You're trying to extort the company built by our father because you're bitter about being let go." "I've prepared a presentation," I said, ignoring her comment and connecting my laptop to the projector. Over the next 40 minutes, I methodically laid out my case. I showed the original partnership agreement with the intellectual property clause. I presented documentation proving I was the sole creator of key systems. I demonstrated how my personal development notes predated the company's official project launches. Most damaging to Miranda's position, I revealed evidence that she had systematically removed my name from patent applications and technical documentation in the months before my termination, suggesting premeditation. "This is a clear pattern of intellectual property theft and fraud," Matthew concluded after I finished presenting. "We have more than enough evidence to prevail in court." The board members looked stunned. My father had gone pale, and my mother was dabbing at tears. Miranda sat rigidly, her expression locked in a mask of defiance. "What exactly do you want?" asked Richard Goodman, the board chairman. "I want what's fair," I replied. "I helped build this company. I created the technology that made it successful. I'm not trying to destroy Reynolds Solutions. I'm trying to reclaim what's rightfully mine." "And what does that mean in practical terms?" Goodman pressed. "I'm prepared to offer a solution," I said, sliding copies of a document across the table. "Horizon Systems will acquire Reynolds Solutions at a fair market value, to be determined by independent appraisal. All current employees will be offered positions with Horizon. The Reynolds name and brand can be maintained if desired." Miranda slammed her hand on the table. "This is absurd. You're trying to steal the company." "Miranda." My father spoke for the first time, his voice weary. "Let's hear him out," I continued. "Alternatively, Reynolds Solutions can license the intellectual property legally from me for a fair royalty, but that would require new management that I can trust to honor agreements." The implication was clear. Miranda would have to step down. The board called for a recess to discuss privately. As we waited in an adjacent room, Matthew seemed pleased. "You made a compelling case. They know they're in a legally vulnerable position." When we reconvened an hour later, the atmosphere had shifted. My parents looked defeated. Miranda was noticeably absent. "We've discussed your proposal," Goodman said, "and we've also spoken with Miranda. The board has decided that an acquisition is the most sensible path forward, provided the terms are fair to all shareholders." I nodded, relief washing over me. "I believe we can work out terms that everyone will find acceptable." My father asked to speak with me privately after the meeting. We went to his old office, now half emptied as Miranda had been in the process of redecorating. "Did you have to do it this way?" he asked, looking suddenly much older than his 62 years. "You didn't leave me any choice," I replied. "You chose Miranda over me at every turn. You gave her credit for my work. You handed her the company I helped build. And when she fired me after 12 years of service, you supported her decision." Dad sank into a chair. "I always thought Miranda needed more support. You were always so capable, so self-sufficient. She seemed to need the validation. And now she's nearly destroyed the company because of your favoritism," I said, the words harsher than I intended. He didn't deny it. "Where is she now?" "She resigned effective immediately. She's cleared out her office and left." The news hit me harder than expected. Despite everything, Miranda was still my sister. "I never wanted it to come to this," I said quietly. "Neither did I," Dad replied. "But perhaps it had to." The next day, Miranda called me. I expected more anger, more accusations, but her voice was subdued. "You won," she said simply. "I underestimated you. I always did." "This wasn't about winning, Miranda, wasn't it?" she asked, a hint of her old sharpness returning. "Anyway, it's done now. I've accepted a position in London. I'm leaving next week. Miranda, we're still family. We can work through this." "No," she said firmly. "I don't think we can. Not now, maybe not ever. Goodbye, Jesus." The acquisition proceeded smoothly after that. The independent appraisal valued Reynolds Solutions fairly, and the board accepted my offer without further negotiation. Most employees chose to stay, relieved that the company would continue and impressed by how I'd handled the situation. Within a month, I was sitting in the CEO's office, the same office where Miranda had fired me. I'd replaced her modern furniture with pieces that reminded me of Dad's original setup, comfortable and unpretentious. The new company logo combined elements of both Reynolds Solutions and Horizon Systems, honoring the past while looking toward the future. The transition wasn't perfect. Some clients had left during the uncertainty, and rebuilding those relationships would take time. The legal costs had been substantial. My relationship with my parents remained strained, though we were talking again. But for the first time in my life, I was in control of my own destiny. I had reclaimed what was rightfully mine, not through favoritism or family connections, but through determination, preparation, and courage. The company was mine now, and I intended to lead it with integrity, innovation, and respect for everyone's contributions. All the things I had wished for as an employee. The story of how I took back the company would become legend in the industry. But for me, it was more than just a business victory. It was a personal redemption, a declaration that my work mattered, that my vision mattered, that I mattered, and that was worth more than any company could ever be. 1 year after taking control of what was now officially called Horizon Solutions, I sat in my office reviewing our quarterly results. The numbers were better than anyone had predicted. We had not only recovered from the turmoil of the acquisition, but were now growing at a rate that exceeded our best years under the old management. The first few months had been challenging. I had to rebuild trust with employees who had been caught in the crossfire of a family dispute they never asked to be part of. I started by meeting individually with each department head, then with every employee who wanted time with me. Some meetings lasted 5 minutes, others stretched for hours, but each one helped heal the organizational wounds. "I'm not here to continue a family drama," I told them. "I'm here because I believe in what we're building together. Every person in this company matters. Every contribution is valued." These weren't just words. I implemented new recognition programs that highlighted innovations from all departments, not just sales or executive leadership. I established clear paths for advancement based on merit rather than personal connections. Most importantly, I listened, really listened, to ideas and concerns from every level of the organization. Maria, who had followed me from Reynolds Solutions, now served as my chief of staff. She had been instrumental in the transition, helping identify which processes needed to change and which were worth preserving. "The culture is different now," she told me during our weekly check-in. "People aren't afraid to speak up or suggest improvements. They know they'll be heard." The technical team had flourished under my direct leadership. With proper recognition and resources, they had developed 3 major innovations in the past year, including a revolutionary approach to predictive maintenance that was now the talk of the industry. I had also made good on my promise to reach out to former employees who had left during Miranda's brief tenure. Many had returned, bringing fresh perspectives from their time away. Their return sent a powerful message about the company's new direction. My relationship with my parents had evolved in unexpected ways. The first few months after the acquisition had been awkward and strained. We spoke rarely, and when we did, the conversation was superficial, carefully avoiding any mention of Miranda or the company. Then, 6 months in, Dad called and asked if he could visit the office. I gave him a tour, introducing him to new team members and showing him the innovations we'd implemented. He said little during the tour, but I could see him taking everything in, noticing the energy and enthusiasm that pervaded the workspace. "You've done well," he said finally as we returned to my office. "Better than I expected. Better than I could have done." Coming from my father, this was extraordinary praise. For the first time in my life, I saw genuine admiration in his eyes. "We were wrong about you," he continued. "Your mother and I. We always saw Miranda as the natural leader, the one with business instincts. We pigeonholed you as the technical guy, the support system." "You weren't entirely wrong," I replied. "I am a technical guy. But that doesn't mean I can't also be a leader." "I see that now," Dad said, "and I'm sorry it took all this to make me recognize it." That conversation began a healing process between us. My parents started coming to company events, no longer as owners, but as family of the CEO. Mom even volunteered to mentor some of our younger employees, finding a new role that suited her talents for nurturing potential. Miranda remained in London, working for a financial services firm. We exchanged occasional text messages on birthdays and holidays, civil but distant. I had reached out several times suggesting a real conversation, but she wasn't ready. Perhaps she never would be. I had made peace with that possibility, though I left the door open for reconciliation. The most profound change, however, was within myself. For years I had defined my worth through my family's recognition, constantly seeking validation that never quite came. The painful journey of losing my position, fighting for what was mine, and ultimately rebuilding the company had forced me to find validation from within. I no longer needed my parents' approval to know my value. I no longer measured my success against Miranda's accomplishments. I had discovered a confidence and clarity that came from standing up for myself, from knowing exactly what I had created and what I was capable of creating in the future. This newfound self-assurance influenced every aspect of my leadership. I made decisions based on what I believed was right for the company and its people, not to prove myself to anyone else. I acknowledged mistakes quickly and learned from them rather than hiding them out of fear of judgment. 6 months after Dad's visit, I made perhaps my most significant change to the company. I renamed it again. Horizon Solutions became Alvarez Technologies, taking my mother's maiden name rather than continuing either the Reynolds or Horizon branding. "A fresh start," I explained to the team, "honoring our past but not defined by it." The name change symbolized the final step in my journey from overlooked family member to independent leader. It was my declaration of independence, my statement that this company was now truly my own creation. As our second year under new ownership began, I noticed a young intern working late one evening, hunched over his computer with the same intensity I had shown at his age. His name was Kai, a computer science student who had impressed our HR team with his passion for supply chain optimization. "What are you working on?" I asked, stopping by his desk. He looked up, startled to find the CEO standing there. I had this idea for improving the distribution algorithm. It's probably nothing." "Show me," I said, pulling up a chair. For the next hour, Kai walked me through his concept. It was rough around the edges, but contained a spark of genuine innovation. I could see my younger self in his enthusiasm, in his desire to improve something just because he thought it could be better. Develop this further, I told him. Take 2 days off your regular duties and focus just on this idea. Then present it to the development team next week. The look of shock and gratitude on his face reminded me of how powerful recognition can be, especially when you're just starting out and unsure of your place. As I walked back to my office, I reflected on how differently my own career might have unfolded if my early innovations had been nurtured rather than minimized. The thought didn't make me bitter anymore, just determined to create a different environment for the people who worked with me now. The lessons I had learned through my journey were hard-won, but invaluable. Your worth isn't determined by others' recognition. Fighting for what you've created isn't selfish, it's necessary. Family ties are powerful, but they shouldn't be chains that bind you to unhealthy dynamics. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to start over on your own terms. I had lost a sister, strained my relationship with my parents, and endured public and private battles to reach this point. But I had gained something far more valuable: the freedom to define my own success, to build something that truly reflected my values, and to lead in a way that lifted others rather than diminishing them. As I sit here today, looking out over the company that now truly bears my imprint, I can honestly say I wouldn't change how things unfolded. Every painful moment was a necessary step on the path to where I am now. Have you ever had to fight for recognition in your family or workplace? What did you learn from that experience? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming professional challenges and family dynamics. Share this video with someone who might need encouragement to stand up for their contributions. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your work has value, even when others fail to see it.